What is an endgame level projector to you? I would love to hear what your thoughts are down in the comments, because here today we're talking endgame projectors, and we're talking about one of the two endgame projectors that I have here in my home theater. Today we're talking about the Sim2 Mico 50. And while it may not be the best projector that I've ever owned, that title is probably reserved for my HT5000. The Sim2 Mico 50 that I have here in my home theater is probably my favorite projector that I've ever owned. Let me tell you why I think it's my favorite endgame home theater projector. The term endgame, at least for home theater use, gets kind of thrown around quite a bit here on YouTube, and it kind of permeates a lot of content in the home theater space. And that term endgame can mean different things to different people. At least for me, here in my home theater, while endgame does kind of signify some of the top of the line items that I have here, it doesn't always mean that. It can also mean something that holds nostalgic value or something that has more sentimental value for me. While that kind of is the case for, say, my JBL speakers, it doesn't really fall as much in line with my two projectors that I own. But the main reasons I like my two projectors, my HT5000 and the Mico 50, which we're talking about here today, is more so because of the style of projector I like, the high-end DLP projectors. These are two shining examples of some of the best picture quality and technology implementation for that style of projector I think you can find out in the marketplace, especially when you're looking at older, used kind of equipment and not trying to buy the most brand new item. Now, if you look back on my channel to some of the early content I did, I talked about endgame home theater items way back in the very first kind of few months that I had my channel back in 2024. And at that time, I did a video called Realistic Endgame Items, where I talked about a handful of items I felt that I could realistically get within the next, 2 to 5 years, give or take, at the time of recording that. And that was earlier in the year, maybe early summer, late spring of 2024. Here today in 2025, this is almost the end of June in 2025, I have one of those endgame items, and that's the number one item I had on that list. That is the Sim2 Mico 50. And part of the reason that was a top pick for me for endgame item was because I kind of became caught up and infatuated with this idea of high-end DLP projectors. And it was mainly due to the older high-end DLP projector forum on the AVS forum. And that started with my Knoll LED that I had here originally, that I've talked about in other content on my channel, that has now transitioned into the two projectors I have here, the HT5000 and the Sim2 Mico 50. Now, the HT5000, as I've done content on that before, is probably the overall best projector, especially for a high-end DLP, that I have ever seen in my home theater. There is one kind of part that is a little bit lower down on that tier, and that's the black levels, which it's still really good, but it's not going to hit really deep, super black levels like some more modern technologies or some projectors that have dynamic dimming, which is where the Sim2 Mico comes into play, and part of the big reason I like that projector so much that I'm going to get to here in this video. Now, the Sim2 Mico 50 came out around the same time as the HT5000, but it was considered a more budget-friendly one-chip DLP projector versus the HT5000's three-chip DLP projector. That was more of a flagship in the HT5000, and the Mico 50 was more of a budget entry-level projector from Sim2. I ended up paying $500 for a lot of 5 projectors altogether. So when you break that down, I paid $100 for the Sim2 Mico 50. I also paid $100 for my HT5000 that I talked about previously in another video. This projector is somewhat special because not only is it just a regular Sim2 Mico 50, but it also has upgrades that have been made to it that really increase its performance over what it would have been stock when it first came out in 2009. But also, this is the exact projector that I saw in the AVS forum. This projector has gone through the hands of at least 3 members of the AVS forum. And what I mean by that is this projector sold originally from a user on the AVS forum, a member called Johnny V. He sold it to a gentleman, a user on there named Fenceman, I bought this projector from Fenceman. So this projector is the exact projector. I saw all these posts over the years on the AVS forum. This is the exact projector that I saw there. This Mico 50 is not a stock Mico 50. This one is actually upgraded in several factors. It has not only brand new, well, I shouldn't say brand new, but new LEDs put in. They have a couple hundred hours on them, but new LEDs for the light system, but it also has an upgraded lens that you typically would not find on this projector that Fenceman put on there, and he actually made a special kind of coupling and connection setup and spliced wires in to actually get this lens to fit. So this is a unique projector in and of itself because it has parts and things on it that you would normally not find if you were to look at a stock projector or just look around the secondhand market for one of these. This is really kind of a special projector because of all that. So enough with the sentimentality about things. Let's talk about the actual performance of this projector, which is really the reason I like this projector so much, and honestly probably the reason someone would click on this video. Now, even though this was considered the more budget-friendly option from Sim2 at the time of its release, this is very much a dedicated home theater enthusiast level projector for what it is. And it's not small, it's a large projector. It's still not as big as my HT5000 that I have here, but it is a large projector. It weighs 55 pounds, maybe a little over 55 pounds. It is just a large form factor. I mean, there's no way else to really talk about it. But because of that, the components that make up this projector are really high quality, even being almost 20 years old. Now, originally, this projector in its stock form would have put out about 800 lumens because it uses an LED light source. And at the time, that was about the max brightness for the LEDs that would have been shipped stock with this projector. And there's 3 LEDs. There's a red, a green, and a blue, one for each of the primary colors. Now here today in 2025, because this projector has been upgraded with more modern LEDs that fit the sockets, this projector puts out closer to 1,000 lumens, maybe exceeding 1,000 lumens. The colors and the saturation really do pop. It is probably the most vivid, dynamic looking projector in terms of just straight on colors that I have had here in my home theater. And so much so that the vividness of these colors can actually be used to hit higher level color spaces than what originally was intended for this projector when it first came out. And that's because of the dynamics and the saturation and color reproduction of these upgraded LEDs that are in these units if you go out and actually do that. And so while I don't actually do that here in my home theater to hit those color spaces, when you see the image on the screen, you can definitely see why that would be possible, because the colors and saturation and just overall vividness of everything in the image is just outstanding on this projector. And that is one of the big reasons why I like this projector so much. It's obviously not the only reason, but that is a big reason for it. Stuff just looks so vivid. The colors are so bright, there's so much pop that this projector really looks like it is an HDR or a 4K level projector in its color, just because those LEDs can produce such vividness to the image. While colors are one part of the image and maybe the thing that pops off the most off the screen when you see it, another big factor in a good quality image from a projector is black levels and shadow detail and interesting contrast ratio. And this projector here does something that I have not seen on any other projector that I have ever owned. And that is, this projector can go from full 1000 lumen brightness to complete black by turning off the LEDs in a single frame of the image. It has a dynamic iris, dynamic black feature that actually is pretty well tuned. And when you see the extreme brightness go down to complete black on the screen, it really is jarring and can almost mess with your eyesight. But it is something to really behold when it actually is implemented properly. Now, some people may not enjoy the feature of dynamic dimming or dynamic black because every so often you can see the image kind of pump light a little bit. When there's an image of mixed kind of contrast on the screen, the sensor does kind of get confused every once in a while about what it should do. And so you will see image pumping every once in a while. And while other projectors that are LED based that have dynamic dimming tend to falter with its implementation, such as my Knoll LED that was basically unwatchable when you enabled the dynamic dimming on there, this Sim2 Mico is actually a pretty good implementation of it. And it can go from, like I said, that complete brightness of like 1000 lumens down to basically nothing scene by scene. And it is really dynamic and almost jarring to see in person. Before I get to the things that could have been improved, because there's one or two of those, I want to mention just a few quick bullet points of a few other things I think are really good about this projector. Now, the first thing is motion. Like any DLP, especially a single chip DLP, motion is really good. Whether it's panning across the screen, just people walking in the image on the screen, or whether you game, and do video gaming, motion is really smooth across the board for this projector. So that's generally, a positive, not only for this specific projector, but also DLPs in general, usually have pretty good motion. So that's something that I like. Now, another thing I really like is the fact that there really isn't a lot of rainbow effect. This is a single chip DLP projector, so rainbow effect is still there in specific, really rainbow effect heavy content that's really going to like exacerbate that in the image. This projector, for being a single chip DLP, has probably the least amount of rainbow effect I've seen in any home theater projector. It's really implemented pretty well in terms of the rainbow effect control that this projector has. This is probably about the best implementation you can get for a single chip DLP in terms of rainbow effect. Really, it's not prevalent at all in the image. So that is another little bullet point positive that I do like about this projector. And then the last really quick point that I want to make about something I enjoy about this projector is the image processing, especially image processing for non-HD or 4K sources. So your standard def, VHS tapes, DVDs, and Laserdiscs. I really like this projector for that type of media. And when I'm watching a VHS tape or I'm watching one of my Laserdiscs here in the home theater, this is the only projector I use for it. I think it hides some of the imperfections of lower def quality material, where my HT5000, because it is so sharp and so clear, you can pick up every little imperfection, that's in the image. And so for that reason, I enjoy watching my Mico for lower def content sources. And one other thing to go along with that is when I'm watching a Laserdisc here in my home theater, especially if it's a letterboxed widescreen Laserdisc, that image is still in a 4:3 aspect ratio because it was made for old school 4:3 TVs. And so for me, the Sim2 Mico has a much better scaling option for those Laserdiscs. And they allow you to expand the image out while retaining the correct aspect ratio. And so you don't zoom in and like crop pieces of the image off. It still retains and maintains that original aspect ratio. So that's another big positive if you're someone who likes Laserdisc, or you watch maybe VHS tapes that have letterboxed, widescreen content. Or if you're someone who doesn't use like an upscaling DVD player or Blu-ray player, if you're using just a standard def DVD player that doesn't have the scaling built in, then this projector is another good option for that because it can maintain that correct aspect ratio and still expand it to your screen. So that's another thing, and really the final big thing that I do enjoy about the Sim2 Mico. Of course, everything can't be perfect on something like this, so there is one or two little things that I think could be a little bit better on this projector, but honestly, these are just kind of nitpicks for me, nitpicking, and it's only because I have my HT5000, which is such a good high quality projector in my opinion, that I can see some little deficiencies in the Mico. But if you were to only have this projector and not have a higher end projector to compare it against, I don't know if you would notice some of this. But for me, the one big kind of, and I wouldn't even say imperfection, but the one big nitpick I guess I have is with the lens. And the lens is a little bit soft compared to my HT5000 and even compared to my C3X that I got here recently for $50. Now those projectors are extremely razor tack sharp. to the point where you can walk up to the screen and see the individual like pixel grid lines for the actual pixels in the image. That is how sharp those images and those lenses and those projectors are. The Mico is not that type of projector with the lens that is on there. Now, the NV41 Barco lens that is on this projector, as I said at the start of the video, is not the standard projector lens you would have seen on this projector. This is a completely new implementation that Fenceman, the guy that I bought this from, implemented on this projector. He kind of retrofit a kind of bracketing system to get it to fit in there, and he spliced in all the powered controls and everything. So he got it to work, and it is a nice lens, and it has a really good throw ratio, and zoom functionality to really like expand and contract the image for a lot of different screen sizes. But in terms of overall like clarity and sharpness, it isn't the best in terms of the projectors I have here. Out of the three I currently have in my home theater, the Mico is honestly the third out of those three. And part of that may also be my situation here in my home theater. If I could push this projector back another handful of feet, I think it would alleviate that kind of issue. But given where I'm at with my throw ratio and distance, I think it's kind of exacerbating the issue of the kind of softness in the image. But at least for me, in my specific situation, it is a little bit dull, a little bit soft compared to my other projectors. And the last thing that is a bit of a little nitpick, I guess for me, is also a double-edged sword, because part of the reason this projector is so good is because of this issue, but it's also a pain in the butt in its own sense. And that is the size of this projector in the weight, in the heft, being almost 60 pounds. You cannot just take this projector and sit it anywhere. You cannot just kind of put it wherever you want. You have to have a dedicated space to put it because it is so big and so heavy. And while that is, like I said, a double-edged sword, the quality is so good because it has some really good heavy quality components inside of it. It's also just a pain to move around. So much like my HT5000, which is even worse than this, these projectors are big, bulky, dedicated home theater projectors that are meant to kind of be installed and not moved around. And so luckily enough, at least in terms of the Mico, since it is an LED-based projector, those LEDs are going to last at least like 10,000 hours, kind of conservatively, maybe longer than that. So I don't have to worry about like pulling lamps in and out and doing that like I will on my HT5000. But it's just kind of a pain to move around, so that is something that is a bit of a nitpick, that if I want to like move things around here in my home theater, it's just going to be a pain to move that and move my HT5000 down off the shelf because they are so big and they are so heavy. So that is something to think about if you are somebody who may be interested in a projector like this. They're big, they're heavy, and depending your comfort level with moving something like that, this may be like a 2 or 3 person job to move some of these projectors around. So just be aware of that, if you're interested in something like this. And so with that, we have come to the end of this video. So to kind of wrap this video up, I just want to kind of reiterate that this may not be the best projector I've ever owned. I still think that falls to the HT5000. I still think that is just an overall better projector than the Sim2 Mico. But the Mico is my favorite projector, not only because this was the projector I saw in the forums that really got me hooked on kind of like high-end DLPs because of all the positive posts and positive comments that so many users had mentioned in the AVS forum that kind of got me involved in this. So not only because of that, but really the image just is just a good image to look at. It may not be, like I said, the most critical of image to watch, like the HT5000 is. It is a little bit softer, may not be as detailed as like an HT5000, but it's just a fun image to watch. It just has a lot of color, the vibrancy to it, the fact that you can get the dynamic contrast enabled and allow it to go from peak luminance of like 1,000 lumens down to basically nothing by shutting the LEDs off is just, it's kind of jarring, but it's really cool to watch that in action, on an actual, big screen in your home theater. So overall, it may not be the best projector, but this is my favorite projector that I've probably ever owned, and that I maybe will ever own, here in my home theater. I don't know. We'll see where the future kind of takes us. But definitely leave a comment down below about what's an endgame item for you, especially on the projector side of things, because everybody kind of has their own opinions on that. And I just like hearing from everyone. And also, if you enjoy the content, I'm getting pretty close to 3,000 subscribers. I'm kind of nearing 2,800 subscribers on my channel. I'd really like to hit 3,000 before the end of the year. So if you're interested in this content, if you like what I do, definitely consider subscribing to the channel and hitting a like on this video. I really would appreciate it. And with that, this video is going to be done with now. I'm sure this video ran a little longer than I wanted it to, but that's just kind of what happens sometimes with these. So with that, I will see you the next time in the next video right here on Secondhand Home Theater. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.